this is Belinda Dow, registered clinical dietitian. Welcome to my channel. If you don't know me yet, you might want to subscribe and stay tuned for more videos and interesting topics that I'm sure you will enjoy. So, before I get into why sleep deprivation can cause weight gain, as well as if you want a dysfunctional hormone balance, click the subscribe button and the notification bell to stay up to date with my upcoming videos. So, to get started, many studies have shown that sleep deprivation, whether it was self-induced, whether it's insomnia, whether it's untreated sleep apnea, or maybe another sleep disorder or reason why, it commonly leads to a metabolic and a hormonal dysregulation. So that may sound complicated, and honestly there is a lot going on in your body when you are sleep deprived, or let's say lacking enough hours of sleep, or you might be getting in 7 or more hours of sleep, but the actual quality of the sleep doesn't allow you to wake up feeling refreshed. And I'm sure probably a lot of you can relate to that. So how is weight gain and sleep connected? So first, you should know that poor sleep is associated with an increased, if you want, oxidative stress. It's also linked to glucose intolerance, which is a precursor to diabetes, and insulin resistance. So you also need to consider that the longer you are awake, the more you are exposed to the possibility of eating again, eating late, or eating before you actually go to sleep. So those are all no-nos for weight loss. So what I'm going to show you here is just a little example of how, if you want, the lack of sleep can affect the brain, it can affect the body, and it can actually affect your behavior. So if we were to look at the brain, so the willpower to fight cravings is reduced. The pleasure and reward center signaling is enhanced. If we are to look at body, you have lower leptin levels, which is decreasing feelings of fullness, and you have high ghrelin levels, which is increasing hunger. If we are to talk about behavior, you're less inclined to exercise, and you're more inclined to sit and do absolutely nothing. So to explain a little bit about how leptin and ghrelin work. Leptin is mainly produced by your fat cells in the body, and it works to regulate our fat levels by controlling our appetite. The amount of leptin released is actually directly related to the amount of fat in the body. So the more fat we have, the more leptin we have. So in a healthy person carrying, let's say, excess fat, leptin levels are increased, and this signals the brain to reduce appetite. So the body can then use some of that fat storage to kind of power itself, and results in lowering the levels of stored fat. When we talk about sleep, when we get enough sleep, the leptin levels should increase steadily during the night, okay, and peaks around 2 a.m. And this gradual rise during the night, it's evolved, if you want, that we don't feel hungry when we should be sleeping. Okay, so many studies have actually looked at how leptin levels are affected by sleep duration, and this has shown that leptin levels actually decrease in individuals who are sleep deprived. So when we fail to get enough sleep, the leptin levels remain low, and the brain believes that the body needs to take in more energy. So the brain then sends that hunger signal, and we end up feeling more hungry, we end up eating more, and possibly overeating, depending on, let's say, how long we're actually staying up to begin with. And this happens even though we don't actually need the energy. So the calories that are taken in are kind of, if you want, they're stored as fats because the body actually thinks that it needs to build up reserves. Okay, so The other hormone we're talking about is when we look at ghrelin. So ghrelin is mostly made in the stomach, and it is known as the hunger hormone. So it's known as the hunger hormone because it's responsible for making us feel hungry. So let's say just before you eat, your ghrelin level in the blood is increased, and this is thought to give, if you want, rise to the hunger pangs which promote us to eat. So once we've eaten, the ghrelin levels decrease. So to talk about the sleep relation, when we sleep, our ghrelin levels naturally decrease because our bodies don't need to burn as many calories when we're not active, right? So when we don't get enough sleep, our ghrelin levels do not decrease as much as they actually should. So the feelings, if you want, of hunger, they persist even when the body doesn't actually need more calories. So if you want, by alternating these two key hormones, sleep deprivation leaves us feeling both hungrier and also less full than we actually are. So if you want, this scenario and change in hormones will put us at a higher risk to gain weight, unfortunately. Another hormone a lot of people fail to associate with sleep deprivation is insulin. So insulin release is the signal that tells our cells to take in sugar, which then we use for energy, right? So it also signals if you want your cells to start making fat for our bodies to store. So the more insulin in the body, the more fat storage occurs. So if we look at studies that have shown fat cells becoming less responsive to the release of insulin in people who are sleep deprived, also known as insulin resistance. So this actually indicates that, individuals who are sleep deprived are more prone to becoming insulin resistant. So there was a study done where healthy individuals were subjected to sleep deprivation, and their fat cells actually mirrored what is seen in a type 2 diabetic individual. There's also one study that showed that actually a single night of sleep deprivation could lead to insulin resistance, while another study showed changes consistent with prediabetes after only 3 weeks of sleep deprivation. So we can see that when we aren't getting the sleep we need, these three hormones, leptin, ghrelin, and insulin, signals to our bodies that we need to store more fat. So our bodies are trying to ensure that we have enough energy to survive in our sleep deprived state, but this unfortunately tends to result in weight gain. Now, that is what goes on metabolically when we are sleep deprived, and sometimes can be the only factor you're actually missing in your attempts to lose weight. So you might be doing everything right, you might be working out, you might be exercising all the time, you might be on a proper diet plan, but your sleep patterns are out of balance and you will not see the weight loss you want to see. If we are to put the metabolic aspect aside and think about behavior and brain function, if you want, you can see that the sleep deprivation actually doesn't allow us to make the better food choices and living a healthy lifestyle. So what happens in the brain during sleep deprivation shows some profound effects on how our brains work. So many studies actually use brain scans to look at how brain responds to food or images when sleep deprived compared to someone who's well rested. So when it comes to weight gain, brain imaging scans have shown that there are two key regions that are shown to be affected by sleep deprivation. So we have the prefrontal cortex and we have the amygdala. So the prefrontal cortex is particularly sensitive to sleep deprivation, and it's important for memory, it's important for attention span, problem solving, decision making, self-control, amongst other functions. So when we're sleep deprived, the activity in this region is reduced. So we're not as good at making decisions, we're not as good as retaining self-control, as well as our willpower to make healthier eating decisions. And as we know, self-control and willpower are key factors in making, if you want, the right food choices, and it results in allowing us to control our weight. So let me give you an example. So if we're talking about self-control, how does self-control work? Salad or McDonald's? If we're talking about a complex decision we're trying to make, should I eat a few fries? Should I buy this bag of chips? Should I get the small bag? Should I get the family size bag? When it comes to willpower, I'll exercise. I will exercise. I'll exercise tomorrow. Maybe I'll exercise tomorrow. Maybe I'll exercise the day after. Or you know what? Maybe I'll start on Monday. Yet, while the activity in the prefrontal cortex is hindered, the opposite is occurring in other areas of the brain, such as what I mentioned before, the amygdala, which is important for processing of emotions. So there is increased activity in this area in sleep-deprived individuals, indicating that our emotions, if you want, are heightened during sleep deprivation. So when we're sleep deprived, the amygdala, which is like I said, involved in the regulation of emotions and emotional behavior, becomes much more responsive to things that are perceived, if you want, as pleasing. So for example, sitting on a sofa and watching TV, those that are rewarding, like let's say having a chocolate bar or a burger. So our brain's reward system uses both the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, and both drive our behavior towards things we like, such as food, such as alcohol, fun activities, and away from the things that we don't like pain, conflict, maybe tasks or responsibilities that we rather just put off and leave for later. So in a person who has had adequate sleep, let's say, at some points, another part of the brain will intervene and remind the person that, too much food or the wrong types of food are going to result in weight gain. So regress and consequence, if you want, are aspects we are aware of when we have adequate sleep. So we're able to make the more rational decision to, let's say, put away the bag of chips or skip the cookie. Okay, so however, when we are sleep deprived, those signals at the reward center are amplified. So when the person eats that cookie or the burger, the sensation is actually more intense, and the drive to eat more is increased. Okay, so, and then if you want, secondary to that, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for reminding us that, junk food is going to result in weight gain, it's hindered. So the signal to stop is weaker, and that is also going to weaken our willpower. Okay, and that's why a lot of the time, and I'm sure, a lot of you can relate to that, to this to a certain extent, you'll have a fatty meal or a junky meal or maybe a box of cookies, and later on during the day, or sometimes, right after, you start to feel a sensation of guilt. And then, you're just like, why did I eat all of that? Or what's wrong with me? Do I have no self-control? And those feelings sometimes can actually be quite, if you want, dangerous, because they'll kind of play with you, and they'll play with your self-shame and how you perceive yourself, and how even you perceive yourself when it comes to being successful. And in a way, it's kind of tricking you to believing that it's hopeless to go on a diet plan, or that you will never get to the weight you want to get to because look, I have no self-control. So when in reality, it could actually be the sleep deprivation altering parts of your brain where your logic, your willpower, and your good decision making, just fly out the window. So if you feel like this could be you, or your sleeping habits are erratic, really try to work on changing that before, assuming that your metabolism is broken, or shaming yourself that you just aren't strong enough, or you don't know, or you don't have, enough control to be on a diet plan. Okay, so really try to fix that before you start, being too hard on yourself. I hope this video was helpful, as usual. And if you have any personal questions you are hesitant to maybe post publicly, you can always message me privately. If you like this video, do not forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay up to date with my videos. See you next time.